when there is appearance of doing wrong. This is somebody that was on the Judiciary Commission and was a Supreme Court justice in this state. Now I'm going to go through just a few examples. There are many across the state, but I'm going to go through a few some of which have been in the paper. Example 1, Kevin Nunes. At the age of 13, he was arrested for domestic abuse and released by the court. While his first case was still being screened by the district attorney in the months between January and October of 2023, Nunes was arrested by 4 separate events for the following escalating charges. January, simple criminal damage to property. February, 3 counts of aggravated assault with a firearm. March, all in 2023, domestic abuse, child endangerment. Next, October 2023, 4 counts of aggravated assault with a firearm and 1 count of illegal possession of a handgun by a juvenile. He was released by the court after each arrest. On February 2024, he's finally brought into court on all these charges. When he arrived in court, he tested positive for cocaine, methamphetamines, ecstasy, and marijuana. On March 8th, he pled guilty to all the charges and received a sentence from Judge Candace Bates Anderson of 21 days in Boys Town. That outfit is supposed to be meeting the needs of youth and families in a variety of continuum of care services. For all those charges, on May 13th, he appeared in court again and testified positive for marijuana. The court also noted that he refused to charge his ankle monitor, and thus it was not operational. As a result, he was sentenced to 12 days in juvenile jail. Just 7 days into that incarceration, on May 20th, 2024, his defense attorney petitioned to the court to release him early, and the judge agreed. Weeks later, he was June 30th, 2024, Nunes murdered French Quarter tour guide Christy Thibodeau. I think you overread about that in the paper. If that judge had been following the law and making common sense, that young lady would be alive. Item number 2, Cruz Matute. In January of 2021, at the age of 14, he was arrested for unauthorized use of a motor vehicle and aggravated flight from an officer and was released by the court. Between the days of June 5th and 6th in 2021, this is a few months later, he was again arrested. 3 separate incidents, 3 separate locations, 5 counts of armed robbery and carjacking, 2 counts second-degree kidnapping, and 1 count of aggravated battery. He was released by the court after each arrest. Matute pled guilty to some of the charges in August of 2021, and Judge Derensburg sentenced Matute to 30 days of outpatient alcohol treatment with the Council of Alcohol and Drug Abuse, another charitable organization. The robbery, carjacking, kidnapping, aggravated battery charges, all crimes of violence were reduced by the district attorney. He was sentenced to 2 years of probation for all of his charges by Judge Derensburg. Court records show that his probation was riddled with violations. February 2022, continues to miss school, not compliant with probation, and not in compliance with his curfew. March 28th, the judge removed the condition that he had to wear an ankle monitor. On June 13th of 22, he had continued violations of probation, but the records don't indicate exactly what. On July 11th of 2022, he failed to fail summer school due to too many absences. Any of those things should have ended up resulting in his being refused probation or revocation. On August 21st, while still on probation, Matute robbed and attempted to murder Noah Hansard. Noah was robbed, shot, and left for dead on the side of the road in Lake Terrace. As a result of that incident, Noah is now confined to a wheelchair and has spent most of his time since then in and out of hospitals. This is the crazy part. On September 19th, after he had committed that crime, Judge Derensburg, quote, commends Matute for doing a good job and staying out of trouble, seemingly unaware of Matute's whereabouts weeks before when Noah was robbed and shot. Number 3, Kendall Miles. On April 2nd, 2021, at 16 years old, he was arrested for theft of a motor vehicle and 2 counts of aggravated assault. That doesn't mean a fight. That means aggravated. On June 7th, a little later, he was arrested for illegal possession of a handgun by a juvenile, aggravated flight from an officer, and unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, which means basically you stole it, but you claimed you were going to bring it back. After this arrest for all those charges, he was released again. Court records from Orleans Parish indicate that on October 25th, 2021, he also had gun charges pending in Jefferson Parish. By January 10th of 2022, Kendall Miles again, was arrested for 3 separate incidents at 3 separate locations, 2 accounts of attempted armed robbery, illegal possession of a handgun by a juvenile, and 2 counts of illegal possession of stolen things. On March 17th, he pled guilty to those charges. He was placed in the Office of Juvenile Justice. Somehow, 4 months later, on July 17th, 2022, despite being sentenced to 2 years, he was freed from juvenile life sentence. On July 17th, 2022. On that day,
you do you? That's your bill.
He carjacked and shot Scott Toops twice. Toops was left fighting for his life in ICU for 71 days. The district attorney missed the legal deadline to transfer Miles' case to adult court, and the case against him was dismissed. Just 2 more. And, although there are a lot more, but just 2 I'm going to talk about. Nelson Banks was granted parole in Orleans Parish by Judge Derensburg. Banks had been serving a juvenile life sentence that would have kept him in custody until age 21. His criminal history began at 14. He was originally sentenced after carjacking a 73-year-old woman when he was 14 and running over her with her own car near Bayou St. John. Banks's criminal record continued while he was in custody. In 2022, he escaped from the Juvenile Justice Center, and then while still in custody, he kidnapped someone in Ouachita Parish, where I live. Raphael Goyeneche, who runs the Metropolitan Crime Commission, said, quote, that's an indication you haven't been rehabilitated, so why would you parole somebody at that point in time? Close quote. After his release, Banks was arrested in August on fraud and gun charges. He was bonded out and was awaiting a parole revocation hearing when the police said he murdered 19-year-old Semaj Davis in New Orleans East. According to Goyeneche, quote, the judge didn't use the information that was available to him to make the appropriate decision, and decisions have consequences, close quote. Last, but certainly not least, is the story of Jacob Carter. Jacob Carter, as you may recall, was the person whose name was mentioned by the governor during his opening speech to this legislative session. In 2024, Jacob Carter was an innocent visitor to the city of New Orleans. He owned a bagel shop in Tacoma, Washington. He was murdered by a juvenile who was 17 years old at the time of the murder, so he could be charged as an adult. who had was supposed to be on an ankle bracelet monitoring program. During the month of November, the ankle monitor was working, and a report was sent to the court indicating that he had violated the terms every day during that month. Over 45 notifications that month. He had been released under the condition that he wear the ankle bracelet monitor and that he go to either his job or his house. And he went all over the city. And then, as we all know, in June, in January of 2024, he murdered Jacob Carter. And that's Jacob Carter's family is the one that dug into and found out this information that he had been released or he was not being properly monitored, and that it would have been very easy for the court to have revoked his release because he broke all the conditions of it over and over again. As a side note, after he murdered Jacob Carter, he went throughout the city and committed some other crimes as well, breaking into cars. A simple act of revoking that would have saved this young man's life. And if it weren't for his family, Isaac Carter, who dug into all this, we probably wouldn't know a lot of those details. And for that reason, I do want to name this the Jacob Carter Act. So what was the Carter family's recourse? What could they do? They reached out to me, not because I'm on Jude C, they don't even know what that is, but because his parents happen to know a friend of mine that lived in Texas. And I told him, I don't think there's anything you can do except file a complaint with the Judiciary Commission. I referred him to another lawyer who knew a lot about this thing and filed cases more like that than I did, because that's not really my area of law practice. And they told him the same thing. You can't really sue the judges for releasing somebody prematurely. So they made the complaint to the Judiciary Commission. The commission wrote them back and said, there's nothing to see here, we're closing the case. They appealed it pursuant to whatever process that they use in the Judiciary Commission, which I think is you just reassert that your complaint, write another letter. And the commission wrote them back another letter, January 7th of this year, with a lot of gobbledygook in it, and I have copies for the committee if you want to see them. But they claim the highest level of scrutiny, a minimum of 4 separate and independent levels of review are conducted, including by attorneys specializing in this area of the law. Your files were independently reviewed by at least 2 attorneys from the Office of Special Counsel, 2 attorneys from the Office of Commission Counsel, and Chief Executive Officer of the Commission. Then the entire 14-member commission reviewed your files and discussed any current concerns. Following this review, the commission voted to close the files. In other words, nothing. He said there was insufficient evidence to support the allegations of misconduct. Now, I think that's blatantly false. However, what's even worse is that they didn't even open an investigation. They didn't say, we need to look into this more deeply. But I believe that may be turning around. In response, Mr. Isaac Carter, Jonathan Isaac Carter is his name, wrote a letter back to the commission. And let me say this at the outset, the commission staff did not give this letter to the commission members. At least not to all of them, because I know several of them found out about it after I gave it to them. Dear Ms. Blackwell, at the commission. I am in receipt of your letter dated January 7th. I am not surprised by the determination of the commission in this matter. Indeed, I was expecting this outcome, which is sad, by the way, that he had so little faith in our system. In the wake of my brother's murder, my family has literally been failed by every single institution that we have dealt with in the state of Louisiana. It is no surprise, then, that the Judiciary Commission now joins the long list of institutions that have failed us and Jacob. In your letter to me, you wrote that the Commission, quote, understands my concerns, close quote. To be crystal clear, the Commission does not. And how could you? There's no way the members of the Commission or Staff Council could begin to understand the depth of my family's pain or comprehend the nightmare we've been living in for the past 2 years. I do hope you realize the pain we live with continues to be exacerbated by the failures of Judge Candace Bates Anderson and Judge Rainford Derensburg, and people like you who excuse their behavior. Nothing changes the fact that these two individuals persistently fail to do their jobs. Their actions and that which they did and which they failed to do speak for themselves. My family will bear the impact of their failures long after you are done thinking about this case. We'll carry it with us the rest of our lives. It is frankly insane to me that a mere month ago, the Commission justifiably recommended that District Judge John Reeves be giving a 30-day suspension for accepting $100 in a courthouse handshake. Yet Judge Bates Anderson and Derensburg will literally face no accountability, not even so much as a reprimand, even though a human being is dead. Where is the justice in that? There are glaring and systemic public failure issues that were literally created by these two individuals. The conditions they created made it possible for my brother to be murdered. I can see the Commission does not take these public safety issues or Jacob's murder seriously. My family and I are not going to get hung up on your asinine decision. For us, the determination of the Commission in this matter is irrelevant. More than anything, it's important for you to know that Jacob was a beautiful person. He mattered, and he didn't deserve to die in this tragic, preventable way. I encourage you, Staff Council, members of the Commission, and Judge Bates Anderson and Derensburg to learn more about who Jacob was by viewing an ebook my family has compiled about his life and legacy. Too often, judges exploit the cloak of anonymity that obscures failures and bad outcomes for the youth and community they are charged with serving. The Commission could have sent a strong message to juvenile judges across the state that persistent violations of the public trust will be identified and met with swift consequences. Instead, the Commission chose fecklessness, and the state of Louisiana is worse off because of it. The upshot here is that the Commission has further reinforced my family's decision to completely avoid your backwards and dangerous state moving forward. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Morris. Just for the non-lawyers in the room, so I can put this in the right perspective, the Judicial Commission is the one that in Louisiana, I guess, disciplines judges, and can they remove them? Can they remove them?
Yes,
technically they can. Okay.
They can.
Also,
well, they can only with the approval of the Supreme Court.
Okay, so that's one way.
So they have to bring charges, and then the charges have to result in a advised to impose discipline, and they recommend discipline of a particular type. Then it has to go to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court ultimately decides what discipline is if any, is to be imposed.
Okay. You also mentioned that current law, a judge can be impeached. Is that correct under current law?
There's debate about that. It would, if you look at the impeachment article, it looks like you should be able to impeach a judge, okay? However, a law professor told a reporter that they don't believe that a judge can be impeached because of we have an entire section devoted to judicial discipline, which is the Judiciary Commission.
Okay.
So,
So this
it
bill
remains
is-
to be seen.
Yeah, so this bill is clearing that up, that
It's
you can.
clearing that up
Yeah.
and will allow the legislature, by a majority vote of the House and 2/3 of the Senate, to force the removal of a judge.
Okay, thank you. Senator Cloud, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you for your thorough presentation and all the real life examples of what's actually going on the ground across the state of Louisiana. This isn't fictionary. This isn't
Not
a
theoretical.
solution in search of a problem. There is a problem, and we have incredible judges. I know you took the district attorneys out. We have incredible district attorneys. We work
Agreed.
very closely with many of these judges who bring real solutions for real problems, and we've carried those bills over the years. But here's the problem. We can pass all of the laws that seemingly would help. We could restructure all of the agencies that seemingly would help, because I've done it with the juvenile. We have set up our juvenile system and are continuing to. It's evolutionary to work for the kids and to provide for safer communities. We can enact the best contracts for monitoring these individuals. We can do all of that. We can put forth millions and millions of dollars to do all of that. And that's what we have been doing as a legislature. What we cannot do is force these judges to make the right common sense decisions. We can't do that. But yet we keep throwing solutions at them. Your bill gives an opportunity to address the most egregious situations, the judges that are not applying good sense and good measure to keep families and communities safe. So I want to thank you for your bill. I think it's important. This is not a jab at our judges. We need them. There are wonderful judges out there. And I would like to inform the public, you have to invest your vote, you have to invest your activism, and you have to invest your dollars to put in men and women of the highest character in these positions that make the most vital decisions for our state and our country and our communities.
Thank you, Senator Cloud. And I would echo what you said about judges. We have fantastic judges in this state. But it doesn't take but a few to really cause a problem and to degrade the confidence that people have in the judiciary. You know, we want people to feel confident and victims to feel confident that they have a shot. And when it comes to civil judges, we want them to people to have confidence that if they have a contract, it will be enforced, or that the law will be followed. And judges often act with impunity about what the law actually tells them, because it's such an ordeal to try to undo it. And I could go into all kinds of examples from my own personal practice, which is a very limited, narrow field of law, but nonetheless allowed me to go to all 64 parishes from time to time, the statewide practice, and to see. And as you said, most judges are good. My father was a judge, very proud of his record. But it's gotten to the point now where we need a process by which accountability can be taken seriously.
Thank you, Senator Cloud. Senator Barrow.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And Mr. Chairman, I hear your passion, and certainly the stories, life, family stories that you have shared have been horrific at best. And I totally understand. I guess I have a couple of, because I see, as you gave each example of families, I wonder about what other failures actually occurred in each of those cases, because it seemed like it was multi-layered, combined with the decisions of the judge. And so it makes me wonder. I know that we have heard many stories and testimonies as it relates to many of the children, that we have heard testimonies about situations as it relates to juvenile situations, etc. And I just wonder what other factors may have been contributing, what kind of made some of the judges make some of the decisions that they made. I don't know that information, but I wonder. But I wanted to ask
That's
you.
part of my point, is that there was no investigation done to root it out and go and interview people involved. Now, I'm sure there's blame to go around, including the district attorney in one of those instances who didn't charge somebody timely. But you can't do everything in one bill.
No, and I guess that's part of my point. I know that you talked about the heavy lifting with the DAs, but as we talk about responsibility, we have to really, I think it's really important that we're clear about the entire process. But what I wanted to ask you was, how do you envision this actually working? What would be the process by which a claim is brought against a member of the judicial branch, and it actually coming before the legislative branch, and how would that be investigated? Who would be responsible for taking that all the way to the end? Because if the Judicial Council,
There would have to be a trial in the Senate, and it would be like an impeachment trial, which we already have provisions for, and we can also work on and pass an accompanying bill to implement it, to hash out more procedural details, in a separate bill.
because let me tell you what my concern is. My concern is, and I hear you very loud and clear, is the overstepping of the legislative branch, the branches of government, as it relates to that. Supposedly, we have already a system in place that should be doing their job, but it sounds like maybe they are not. But are we overstepping our responsibility from the legislative branch of government?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We have three separate branches of government, right? And we have quite often, there's, I think, a pretext to oppose something based upon, that we don't want to cross the line. But the essence of our government and that of the federal government, after which ours is modeled, is that of checks and balances on each other, right? That's why
Absolutely.
judges can be impeached in the federal system. And, the president's powers are executive, but they're also limited in certain ways by what Congress can do. And Congress is limited by certain things that the president can do. They each have a role. Our role as the legislature, we have plenary power, which basically means everything left over. But the president the governor can still veto our bills.
Absolutely.
So he can be involved in the legislative process very heavily.
Yes.
So I think this is an appropriate check on the judicial branch, because the current system is at the moment failing us, and I feel like this if the Judiciary Commission, which I understand is about to get more active because they are feeling public pressure and they are changing, but this legislative address process is more of a backstop for when that fails us, as it did with Jacob Carter.
Well,
At least thus far.
I certainly believe and know that we have the checks and balances in place, and they should be working. But as we know, nothing is perfect, right? I mean, if we lived in a perfect world, we wouldn't need any of this. And people are they just human, right? Sometimes it's just human, right?
I just feel like these cases that I mentioned were kind of low-hanging fruit. No, this bill is not going to miraculously make the judges who are not that great be awesome. But I think they will all be looking over their shoulder a little more and thinking more cautiously and carefully about the decisions they make. Because, just a small little action in each of those cases probably could have saved the life of somebody innocent. And you know what? Saved the perpetrator as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because these people may spend the rest of their lives in jail, whereas if they were caught early and the punishment was swift and appropriate to the act, maybe they'd find a way to find a path that would save their lives. But we'll never know.
I look, trust me when I tell you I've heard so many stories, and I do believe that there is more that the judicial branch should be and should be doing, decisions that they should be making. But what I also know is some of the other factors that are included that we didn't hear that I think maybe have had a contributing factor as well. But I do understand. Let me tell you, I totally understand, and my heart goes out to every family that you listed, because to me it's nothing that I take lightly, and I don't think any of us take lightly. But I just want to be sure that we're not overstepping our boundaries as it relates to the branches of government. That's all
In
I
my
have.
opinion, we're not. But
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Barrow. Again, when you talk about the legislative branch versus the judicial branch, our laws, as you said earlier, already have impeachment in them. However, there's two schools of thought. Does it go to the Judiciary Commission, or do you stick with the impeachment process? But I've talked to attorneys that said, I think it's very clear we can impeach. So I think that, again, what your bill is doing is clarifying what they can do, which is the legislative branch can step in. Okay, Senator Hodges, you have a question?
Thank you. Mr. Acting Chairman, Senator Morris, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to these families, and I want to say to those families, we are deeply sorry for the failure of our system. There's nothing like losing a child. And I totally understand, and I agree with them, and I just want to say thank you for listening to those concerns, because every one of these cases that you listed showed an escalation of criminal behavior in every one of them. And it is shocking to me that 14-year-olds, I have a 14-year-old, that are doing these, and then it escalates into the actual murder of someone. And that's the difference, I think, in what we're talking about, and seeing this pattern of escalation. And they were just still let go and let go and let go. And so I just want to, it's a very difficult position to be in, and I just want to say thank you to the families who have taken the time to address this issue, to help us address this issue. We don't want to overstep our boundaries, but I do believe there has to be some accountability, and hopefully judges are going to start looking at these cases and see a pattern of escalation and keep these people off the streets to keep our families safe. So thank you. I appreciate it.
well, that's awfully nice. Thank you, Senator Hodges.
Thanks, Senator Hodges. Okay, that's before you close, we have some cards we have to read in.
There's nobody to speak against it. So that's awesome.
We have no green cards, however. We do have a few red cards. I'll read them. These are in opposition and are present but do not wish to speak. Chandra Shea Foster. In opposition but does not wish to speak. Mike Moscow. In opposition, does not wish to speak. Tyron Brennan, I believe. Then we have some opposition who do wish to speak. So President would like to speak is Bruce Riley. So Bruce, if you come to the desk, please.
Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, and Mr. Chair, just a couple of things. Bruce Riley with VOTE, and obviously that we're talking about alternative ways to fire judges. Look, I got no problem with firing judges, in abstract. So I'm not here to defend judges. I'm not being paid by any judges, and they can speak for themselves, I'm sure. But we also talk a lot here about the Constitution being overly cumbersome, and there's things that sometimes go against each other, be duplicative. So I'm just wondering, should this bill not be about amending the Judicial Commission, or should it not be about adding "and judges" into the impeachment section, rather than creating a whole other section that's within the powers of the governor, which, as the the chair just pointed out, like, we're removing the governor from the point, so why is it still under powers of the governor? It seems pretty peculiar to me. But just to remind people, the Judicial Commission has 14 people on it, 2 of which are appointed by the Senate President, 2 are appointed by the Speaker, 1's appointed by the Governor. So there's 5 political appointees on the Judicial Commission. 3 are non-lawyers selected by the District Judge Association. 3 are attorneys who've been practicing over 10 years. 2 are district court judges, and 1 is a Court of Appeal judge. So actually, like, the political appointees are a pretty big size of the commission. So I feel like if the commission's not working, maybe that is a better way to address this rather than trying to change the Constitution. Additionally, people can file bar complaints. Maybe that's not working either. Maybe we need to touch that up. There's also a recall election process. If that's not working, maybe we can touch that up. But I agree with you, Mr. Vice Chair. I do believe that the impeachment clause definitely includes, it says elected and appointed officials. I don't see how judges would opt out of that. We could also be talking about term limits. Judges, DAs, and sheriffs all can be in there for 40 years. I don't think that's great for democracy. I think a lot of people would agree with that. But I think that we should be just looking at the impeachment process. And I agree. I don't understand why a legislative address somehow starts this process rather than the House impeachment process. I don't quite understand the technical changes there that's happening. But I agree that checks and balances are essential to democracy. I also agree that, I feel like the governors, the DAs, and the Sheriff's Association, who are all members of the executive branch, have a lot of influence in this body. As we've seen, the DAs were able to opt out of this, even though the chair said himself that they don't even have a judicial commission. At least the judges have a judicial commission that may or may not be working, but the DAs don't even have that. And yet they were able to say, please remove us, and he did. So I feel like they're the ones that are supposed to be enforcing the laws that the people give them, you being the representatives of the people. And yet we see time and time again in this committee and others, the most busy lobbyists up here are members of the executive branch. So clearly we do have a separation of powers problem, and I would love it if we would address that in total rather than this piecemeal approach. But I think if we want to do what the chair wants to do, there's a lot easier ways to do it than create a whole other section of the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. But again, my comment was, since it's still confusion, I think this is the way to end the confusion. Because if you did nothing, you got 2 sides still saying you can impeach. One side says you can't. So
why not add judges to the impeachment clause, though?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be
Well, this is
easier?
just another way to take a bite of the apple. Thank you, Mr. Riley. I appreciate it. Next, in opposition, President would like to speak. Sarah Whittington. Sarah, okay, there you are. Three altogether.
Good morning, Sarah Whittington with the ACLU of Louisiana here in opposition to this. I will echo what my colleague Mr. Riley started with as well. And just for clarification, and this was part of the attempt to educate myself as well, it is Constitution Section 24 labeled impeachment. I just think it should be said because as the plain reading, I do believe that it does cover Section 24, persons liable, a state or district official, whether elected or appointed, shall be liable to impeachment for commission or conviction during his term of office of a felony for malfeasance or gross misconduct while in such office. And then it goes through the procedure. That to me seems pretty straightforward. And then I would also, I know I cannot ask a question, but I will rhetorically say, has the Senate tried? And to date, if there are serious concerns about these judges and the cases that you would bring, I have not seen a case brought. So before we go changing the law to try to make this clearer, I'm curious where the amazing legal staff that you all have, the back and the power that you all have, would you try before you think about changing this law? If you proceed with an impeachment of a judge and then are told it cannot be done, then I can see the need to approach this and have those serious conversations. Additionally, and I just want to make this point, Judiciary Commission, I think, has been entirely covered, but I also think to this point it says a state or district official, whether elected or appointed. I also would just say that if this is based on the main law covers all judges, both district, family, municipal, but it also includes appellate. So where is the power and oversight there as well? That if this is going to be all-encompassing, then I do believe that district attorneys should be included in it. I do believe all judges should be included in it, because if there is going to be equity here, it needs to be all. But my request for you, and in opposition to this bill, is that I do not believe that this bill will accomplish what you're trying to accomplish unless and until you can say that we've tried it and it did not work. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Whittington. The last person present in opposition and present would like to speak, Ronald Marshall.
Good morning.
Morning.
First of all, my name is Ronald Marshall. I represent VOTE, Voice of Experience. I'm from New Orleans. My family has been a victim of crime my entire life. Everyone in my family has been a victim of crime. So I understand what it means to be a victim, and I stand with all victims of crimes. I just have a few talking points I just wrote back there in the back. I appreciate the amendment to remove governors from the decision-making process. However, to place that authority with the state legislators, it still takes power away from local voters. Judges are elected to serve their own communities, but this allows them to be removed by people outside of those communities. Even with added process, the final decision is made by this elected body and not the voters from the communities who elected the judges. On the justification for the bill, we heard that some examples come from Orleans Parish. Most of the examples come from Orleans Parish. That raises a concern about targeting a single parish. In Orleans Parish, the judiciary is predominantly black. This bill includes no safeguards to prevent selective use against Pacific communities. On judicial decision, a judge makes a decision like releasing someone does not mean incompetence or misconduct. Judges must follow the law and the evidence at the time they made the decision. The bill uses broad, undefined terms, which creates the risk that judges are judged based on outcomes. A person is released, they kill someone, that blame is placed on the judge, but not on the legal standards. The final point. This amendment allows state officials to override local elections. It creates a pathway for removal that does not involve the voters' input and carries a permanent ban from office. The bottom line, local communities should decide who serves as their judges, not state officials acting outside their community. And for those reasons, I oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I guess I'm going to repeat myself since I'm in the chair. Evidently, a lot of the opposition believes that impeachment is already in there. It's already there. So if they believe it's already there, why not let's make sure it's already there? And that's what this bill does. Okay, I see no further questions. Senator Morris, on your close.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I could go through some of the things that the other members, the other speakers said, and I'm familiar with them, and they do a good job in advocating for what they believe is right, but they always come down on the side of the criminal. Never come down on the side of the victim or the prevention of crime. And yes, it does allow us as a body, being the legislature, to remove somebody that's local, but it's under very egregious circumstances, and it's a very high bar to do it. And as Ms. Whittington says, she thinks we can already do it, but a law professor thinks otherwise, and it's very confusing. So as the Vice Chair said, why not make it crystal clear? And accordingly, I ask for your positive, affirmative vote, not for me, but for victims like the family of Jacob Carter.
Thank you, Senator Morris. We have Senate Bill 123. Do we have any motion? Chairman Chairman? Okay. Senator Morris made a motion to move the bill forward with amendments. Do I, Senator Barrow?
And I want to make,
Okay.
because I feel like I need to respond because I am perplexed, but I do object, and I object because as we have heard, there's been a lot that we've heard today, but on the federal level, when they have this process in place, it is based for treason, bribery, and other crimes, but not just on rulings. And so I think this is a slippery slope. I do understand and do agree with the chairman on many of the things that he's brought up, but I believe there's multiple failures across the system that actually transfer, and for that reason, I object. But I do agree in theory what he's attempting to do. I just don't believe this is the best method.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to move 123 forward with amendments. There's objection by Senator Barrow. So a vote yes, we'll move it forward. A vote no, we'll keep it here. We call the roll, please.
Senator Abraham?
Yes.
Yes. President Pro Tem Barrow?
No.
No. Senator Cloud?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Hodges?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Kleinpeter?
Yes.
Yes. Chair Morris?
Yes.
Yes. You have 5-1.
Okay, 5-1, you said?
Yes, sir.
Senate Bill 123 is moved forward with amendments.